is our third episode, and we're doing a very interesting and unique episode this time around. Typically with this show, my goal was to promote indie artists and artists that have art out there and talk more about their specific art that they've released so that you guys can all check them out and get more eyeballs on them. But I'm turning it on its head a little bit here because the movie we're going to be talking about was made in 1945, and everybody who was involved in the movie, and I did double check this, are dead. So I don't think it benefits any of them. It might benefit their families. I don't know. It's on YouTube and it's free, so I don't think it benefits many people. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to introduce you to some indie artists who are doing something different. And they are doing podcasts, and they all have Patreon pages as well. And I hope that you get enough of a sense of who they are and what they're about that they win you over and you go check them out and join them up. The movie is 1945's Detour, starring Tom Neal and Ann Savage. So let's go ahead and meet the participants in this discussion. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fandom Forum. I am your host, Joe Compton.
My name's Max Baril, and I produce a podcast called Classic Movie Musts.
I'm Max Baril, and this is Classic Movie Musts, where every week we break down a classic movie while looking to provide artistic insight and historical context. At the very least, we'll talk about what makes these movies classics. Classic Movie Musts releases every Friday, ready to complement your weekend movie viewing plans. Thank you for joining me this week as we kick off Alfred Hitchcock Month on Classic Movie Musts. For the next 4 episodes of the show, we'll be doing a deep dive into the films of the legendary director Alfred Hitchcock. And this week, we're beginning with The 39 Steps. In this episode, during our feature presentation, we'll see how The 39 Steps was Hitchcock's first real masterpiece and established him as the master of suspense. We'll hear about how Hitchcock toyed with his actors during our Buzz from the Backlot segment, but first, let's get into this week's opening credits.
I'm CHRISTIE STRATOS, and you probably already know me. I'm the author of Anatomy of a Darkened Heart and Brotherhood of Secrets, which are 2 books in the Dark Victoriana collection. Much more to come on that. And I have a Patreon page. You can find me at patreon.com/CHRISTIE and at the $8 per month level, I talk about old movies. Really, I've only done old movies so far. I might do newer ones at some point, but I really love old movies more than modern ones myself. This Patreon post is called Double Indemnity, Love as a Justification for Crime. Double Indemnity from 1944 is a classic, but what's so great about this film that it has me watching it and rewatching it and rewatching it? I never get sick of this one. Side note number 1, if the name of this movie got lost and nobody knew what it was, we'd still know what it was from the 1940s or 50s because of the characters' names. Phyllis, see what I mean? Played by Barbara Stanwyck, wants to kill her husband. Sure, we can see the proof that he's not so nice to her, but what we never really see is the truth of how she acts towards him. We only see her treatment of him through the eyes of Walter, played by Fred MacMurray, and all the time she's calling her husband honey. Later on, when we find out she's cleverly murdered her husband's first wife, it's pretty clear she hasn't been a white rose through her marriage. Side note 2. Phyllis and her husband actually have the same kind of relationship as Phyllis's stepdaughter Lola and her boyfriend Nino, who Phyllis later seduces. Those relationships reflect each other, and unfortunately at the end, although Walter's words to Nino make it seem like all will be rosy and bright between Nino and Lola, he's just sentenced Lola to a life similar to Phyllis's. But our perspective of Phyllis is interesting. There's a reason we don't see things from her perspective, and it's not just because this story is from Walter's point of view. It's because ultimately, Phyllis doesn't matter. It's all about the money. Walter ends up wanting to get rid of Phyllis's husband so they can collect the insurance money and be together, but if you watch closely, it's really been all about the money all along. Keep this in mind when we get to the next movie, Pushover, next week. If you want to read the rest of this post and find out some cool bits of symbolism in this movie, be sure to go to patreon.com/ChristieStratos and sign up at the $8 level. I look forward to seeing you over there.
I'm Bob Zerl. I guess I'm one of the co-hosts.
Master of Ceremonies.
Sean.
I'm Sean Kernan, Sean Patrick. I'm the professional film critic. I've been a critic for about 8 years with the Broadcast Film Critics Association and on I think 13 radio stations, so not bad, I guess. I'm proud of it. Josh, go ahead.
I'm Josh Adams. I am the third wheel of this particular podcast. I'm the dark, brooding, mysterious, sexy one, in case anyone's interested in finding that more. So I'm the one that
really, they can't actually listen to the show later if they want to.
Yeah, that's a good point. I really should put my best foot forward then.
What you've all been waiting for, Mandy.
Wow, what an experience this movie is. Nicolas Cage plays a mountain man. He cuts trees, and he's deeply, deeply in love with a woman named Mandy. And she's kind of an unusual looking woman, but she's unusual in a way that's very interesting and oddly attractive, kind of in this almost alien fashion. And the movie kind of plays into that idea of her being kind of alien in a very unique way, and I really like that. But the thing that strikes you immediately, and what blew me back in my seat as we were watching this was King fucking Crimson. God damn it, that's awesome.
Not only that, literally the best King Crimson song ever made. Really the best prog rock song ever, and that's how they open the movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you don't know that song, Starless, I think it is. If you don't know that song, literally right when they cut it off, the song goes fucking crazy. And it's just like random instruments doing weird things that just keeps building. And the movie is that part of the song. And it's just, there's no way he didn't do that on purpose.
Yeah.
Just a weird, phenomenal song that totally works with this movie. And even before that, they just had these kind of, they're not lyrics, but like heavy metal type lines, and I was like, okay, I'm kind of on board for this.
This is so metal. It's so great.
It is literally a heavy metal opera.
It really is. It really is. That score, absolutely. That man. Oh, what a loss to the world, Johannes Johann. I
just read about that this week.
Yeah, he is so incredible, and it's just such a loss that he is not there, and what he and Panos Cosmatos could have done in the future, but he's there the entire time. His music is throughout this movie, and it is amazing.
In the spirit of what we do and who we are, 1945 wasn't exactly the banner year for indie film. So finding an indie film, needless to say, wasn't actually as big a struggle as I thought it really would be. It turned out that there's plenty of filmmakers out there that were making things outside of this Hollywood system, and this just happened to be one of them. And it was actually made by the PRC, which is a film company called the Producers Releasing Corporation, in which the Hollywood studios dubbed it Pretty Rotten Crap for PRC. And it was directed by Edgar G. Ulmer, who was blackballed by every studio because he had an affair with an actor's wife. And it's actually, this movie is actually based on a novel, a series of novels actually by Martin Goldsmith. So it touches on that as well, a little bit of who we are and what we do. And Martin Goldsmith wasn't an indie author, but nonetheless, this was a B movie for most standard Hollywood fare. And it stars Anne Savage and Tom Neal. And it's really an interesting film in the fact that it has some very interesting nuances that give it that noir feel, but it because of its B-ness, it has some interesting differences, I think. And what I noticed right away was the unconventional manner in which the movie was shot. The opening scene is almost feels like it's handheld, and there's a zoom in and out, which I don't think I can ever recall a 1940s movie ever starting that way and ever really using that technique. And it sets a tone right away, but there's I'm curious to know from all of you, what are some of the more interesting things that you guys noticed that it might have struck you as interesting or odd, having the knowledge that you know about the noir era?
I think Anne Savage, she's such a presence. She's and it's a very kind of 1945 presence. It's not the kind of style that could translate into today. So she's definitely of her time, but of that time, she certainly stands out. It makes you kind of wonder why she wasn't a bigger star, because she does fit that mold of that femme fatale of the time, and those biting comments and the tragic nature of the way her character plays out. For me, she's the main standout of this movie, which overall, I mean, it's not bad. I found it rather mundane, though, compared to other film noirs.
It's interesting that you say that about Anne Savage, because in this film, I thought that she was a little bit of a caricature. Like, she overacts a little bit, in my opinion, at least. And she reminds me very much in a Seinfeld episode. They have this a library detective who is way overdone, and he's supposed to emulate those overdone B movies from back in the day. And it's just like that, where, she'll say like, why would you do that? Well, I'll tell you why I did that. Blah, blah, blah. It's really just a lot, but it's enjoyable for a B movie. It's like, if you like watching B movies, this is a good one to watch, I would say.
I felt she was affecting that specifically. I thought that as much as she is over the top, I thought that was a deliberate affect.
I think what both of you are saying, the caricature nature of her performance and the fact that it seems like she's putting it on a bit, to me, is what makes the film the most interesting for a lower budget B movie. We're being told this entire story by our friend Al Roberts, and I think this is very much a justification in his head as to everything that went down in this crazy experience. So as he's telling you this story, he's going to tell you the version where she is the most unlikable person that she could possibly be. We're very much in his head, and I think that's what's so interesting about this movie, is that you have to take everything you see, everything you hear with a little bit of a grain of salt, including her histrionics.
And I watched an interview after watching the movie, and it was on YouTube along the same lines where Detour was found. And it's an interview of Anne Savage talking about her career, but specifically this movie. And I didn't see it when I watched the movie. I wasn't thinking about it. But in this interview, she was talking about how she couldn't really get roles for the good girls, and she didn't really want them either in the 1940s. Because they weren't very interesting. It was always a damsel in distress, or someone that wasn't really putting forth the best, that didn't have the best lines in a script or whatnot. And she liked the bad girls, or whatever you'd want to call Anne Savage in this movie. I guess you could call her a bad girl, femme fatale. She wanted those roles because they at least had some depth to them. They gave her something to work with. And I do think that makes her the best part of the movie. The fact that she actually has something to do here.
The amazing comparison, and I think it's very purposeful, between Sue versus Vera, right? I mean, you almost get a sense that it was the director kind of spitting at Hollywood a little bit, saying, hey, here's your dopey dame, and here's my femme fatale, and which one do you gravitate toward more, right?
Yeah, and the thing about it is that Sue is not much of a character. I mean, she's kind of just sort of there. And in given her profession, being a nightclub singer, you would think she would have a little bit more dimension, a little bit more color, and she doesn't. But there again, that might go to the point that some people have made, that this is an unreliable narrator, that he's kind of painted Sue as a character that she might not actually be. More of what he sees her as.
I think you definitely have these two women, and I think this is where you start to see a little bit of the indie quality of this film, which is, I don't think Walmart had the budget for two leading ladies. You have Sue, and she's briefly in the beginning, and every conversation with her over the phone, you just have a cutaway shot. You don't even have her speaking any lines on the phone. I think she is there as, put on the pedestal. He's trying to get to her. She's the goal, but she's not, I think, meant to really even be a real driving force in this film. Maybe just because of the fact that it's going to run 68 minutes, and it's made for pennies compared to the A feature on whatever double bill it was playing behind.
Do you feel that he over enhanced Vera for that particular reason though, because he didn't have a whole lot of Sue in this?
Yeah, I think absolutely. The dynamic here is between Al and this tension, and his feeling trapped by Vera, and so yeah, you go all in on Vera, and you leave Sue to the side. You don't even need to get into it. There are any number of opportunities. It seemed like he could have potentially gotten free and gotten to Sue. This is really about this dynamic that's unfolding with Vera.
I wonder if any of you also disliked Sue, actually, because in the beginning she's fine, but then when she breaks it off with Al, she does it in such a way that is really, I really didn't like her anymore, because she just sort of was like, all right, well, it's not working out here, so see ya, even though he wants to get married next week and everything. And that made me really dislike her. And when he went to call her afterwards, after she was gone for a little while, I was sort of like, why? Why would you do that? Because she clearly doesn't care enough about you to even say, like, do you want to go together? Like, how can we make this work? She just abandons him. So did you guys dislike her too, or is it just me?
For me, I disliked him so much that I didn't really even think about her. I find him so dopey and so whiny and actually so deserving of his fate that I had no sympathy for him at all. So my thoughts on her, I kind of got why she left, and I kind of got why she was not all that excited about taking him with her.
His face is whiny, like his face.
Right? His narration is whiny. His story is whiny. He's not a particularly compelling hero. Which I get it. It's not. None of these characters are necessarily supposed to be sympathetic.
I was gonna say, I found myself asking, why would you do that a lot for a lot of all the characters throughout the whole movie?
I couldn't help but feel like he's already prepping his alibi to like the police, and he's just like, it's not my fault. My girlfriend left me. This guy mysteriously just died in a car. I mean, I had to take all his clothes and leave him in a like, he's just going out of his way to justify it in such a way of like, oh, it's not even my fault. I'm so put upon. I love the scene where he's like, I decided I needed to learn more about Haskell, so I have a backstory. The first thing I learned about him was he had $738. I mean, it's like, you've learned absolutely nothing about him. You clearly are just stealing his money. You're an unlikable thief. Like, you're not actually creating a compelling story for yourself.
What about the dialogue? Did you guys obviously there's a noir tone to it, but did you kind of feel like it was a little bit more, I don't know, racy or bold, but it was a little different. It was a little saturated, maybe.
There's some, like I said, there's some stuff that she says that's rather biting and interesting. So I liked her delivery of it, and the over the top kind of broad way that she delivered it, far more than I actually liked the lines themselves.
Yeah, in terms of it being racy, the one line that did stick in my head, being a 1945 film, is when she asks him to go to bed. And I was thinking to myself, oh, well, hey, I should take note of that, because it's a 1945 film. I bet they probably couldn't get away with something released by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer at the time doing that. They would only hint at it possibly if the two individuals in the movie were going to sleep together or something, if they weren't married. This is kind of like really taboo, and so my eyes got a little big for the first time watching that particular scene in this movie. In terms of anything else racy, this dialogue to me reminds me of a caricature of noir. And what I mean by that is everyone's talking really mysteriously, like, I was at the bar one time, and I was in the car, and it was raining. It's the narration of it just reminds me of exactly what I expect to see out of like a spoof episode of noir, which is, at this particular point in time, it makes a lot of sense that they're doing it that way. But sometimes it's hard when you're watching the older films on this show that we do, to put ourselves in the mind of an audience member in that time.
It does totally seem like a caricature. I mean, her lines by the end, it's like, out of a spoof cartoon, where it's like, you're never gonna get away with it. See, I mean, I
do think that sometimes in noirs that do make it and are like a classic, like Double Indemnity is loaded with noir talk, and there are some parts of it that are verging on like, wow, this is too much. Like when Fred McMurray gets into that whole thing with Barbara Stanwyck, how fast is I going, officer? And they have this back and forth for lines and lines. And it's great. It's so noir. But like if you put it in this movie, we would laugh at it. In A Double Indemnity, it's like, oh, this is great. This is so noir. You know, so I think that sometimes there's a thin line. And sometimes they like swing and miss a little bit. I wrote down this one line that was, it may not be exact, but it's close enough. What is money but a piece of paper crawling with germs? And like that type of thing, again, it's like almost we missed a little bit, you know?
Look across this movie, there's so many things where you're like, you know, how do you try and make a movie that has some emotional impact with very little money? And you use a series of things that are the tools you have that are cheap. You have one song. Well, let's infuse that song with as much emotional sentiment as possible. You have an actor in a diner. Well, let's use the conventions of noir. And every time he's thinking, we'll dim the lights real hard, flash light on his eyes and zoom in, because that's all cheap. And it shows us he's really in a troubled, tortured state. We'll have as many scenes in a car behind, a screen to simulate driving. And then we'll have as much like banter dialogue as possible because it doesn't cost you anything. I think they really doubled down, and that like those are the things that we associate with noir, and they're all in the scheme of things fairly cheap to pull off.
I did sort of wish that they had picked a different song at the very, very beginning when the guy plays the jukebox. And by the way, the truck driver at the beginning made me think that this was not going to be a B movie because he was a great actor, that truck driver. If you notice, he was actually really good. He plays this song. And I really wished that it was something more symbolic or that gave us a little bit more foreshadowing. It was more about like, oh, I can't believe that you're in love with me, which is fine. But they could have done better, I think. And like those little details, definitely in bigger noirs, they cover that. They make sure to cover that. But also to your point, Max, I noticed that with the lighting, and it did annoy me a little bit because I was also saying, okay, well, they're doing the best they can with the noir thing, but usually there's more symbolism. Again, there's usually more symbolism. And it really did crack me up a little bit with, like at times they did a great job with how Al looked like on the road and how difficult it seemed, but he was in a car for a very long time and still like really sweaty, like as if he was still walking. So I think they missed that part.
How about those crazy pajamas?
That was weird. Was he wearing those? Were those were Haskell's, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I don't think he didn't have a suitcase, did he? I don't think he had.
He threw his suitcase on top of the body, I think, or with the body, so that anybody who came by would think that was his body and not Haskell.
I thought that was Haskell's suitcase, though.
Maybe. I thought that was his, but I'm not sure because he has a line. He has a line there where he says that they'll think it's me. And I thought that was the point of throwing the suitcase, was that they'll think it's me. But I got to your point about the truck driver. I felt the same way. He had so much more personality than anybody else in that diner, and just from that moment, I thought he was going to be like one of the two main characters. I thought, oh, here's the guy. Okay, this will be interesting. And then he's gone, and I'm like, where did he go?
I thought that too. I was looking forward to him, and then he's just gone.
Trying to think of a movie that would have a main character that we dislike really strongly and makes all the wrong decisions.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah, actually, narrow that down a little bit.
One of the things that I love about film noir is when they have a bad character who you are rooting for despite yourself, and you couldn't root too much for this guy because he was kind of dumb, like for too long. Do you know what I mean? Like, let her dial the police already. Let her call your bluff. It's ridiculous. It's better than what you're doing.
A lot of I feel like time padding in this movie that, you obviously have the few like musical numbers for the sake of it, the long drawn out like calling of like the switchboard operators just to fill some time. And that included where it's like, so now, then it's a voiceover, and we negotiated for a while and we ended up back where at the price that the guy originally stated. And you're like, well, okay, what was the point of that? Other than to draw things out a little bit. But I'm going to, in terms of a movie recommendation, I don't know, it's not so apropos, but it's a noirish movie of a man assuming other people's identities, trying to live their lives. And it's actually a very good movie. I'm going to go ahead and recommend The Talented Mr. Ripley. If you want,
I was just thinking that.
If you want to watch someone try and assume other people's lives.
And that sort of the very similar sort of haphazard way he finds himself into murder, like when he's got absolutely no other option. But that movie is so much better than this because, like, I was watching that movie, I could not believe how much I was rooting for Tom Ripley, and I was so much on his side, and then I realized, oh my God, that's a murderer. I can't be on his side. But I was like I was so sympathetic to him. Whereas Tom Neal, not for a second, not for one moment was I ever on this guy's side.
Did you all notice that early on in his montage of hitchhiking, that to apparently Ulmer wanted to convey the sense that he was traveling east to west, but they hadn't shot the movie that way. So he actually flipped the film negative. So all the cars are on the wrong side of the road, but they're traveling right to left.
Yeah, that was jarring because I was like watching him get in the side of the car and there was the wrong side of the car, and I'm like, is this in England all of a sudden? Like they're driving on the wrong side of the like the steering wheel's on the other side.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you open the door, you're like, oh, wake up, and this person won't wake up, which first of all, that's a scary thing, but let's just ignore it. He opens the door and just lets him fall on the ground. Like, it's the premise of most of the rest of the movie, but it's just, who does that? Why would you
figures he's dead? He just figures he's dead. He doesn't check his pulse, or he just, okay, he's dead. I'm going to pull him off to the side of the road.
I'm just going to go ahead and maintain that that's his version of the story he's telling to the police, because it makes so little sense.
Yeah.
That's
generous of you. That's very generous.
I agree, because like I said, I don't feel like the film communicated that well enough. I mean,
but you got to do what you can.
Yeah, I agree. Now, the mirror scene to that would be her in the car with him, and she falls asleep, and he starts to kind of freak out a little bit because it's so reminiscent of the way that Haskell had fallen asleep, and then suddenly she bursts awake and starts accusing him of murder. That to me was like the weirdest scene in the movie. It was so off-putting and so bizarre and out of nowhere. And I get that's probably a result of just necessity of keeping the movie short and not having a lot of budget to spend a lot of time developing the idea. But in my head, I started writing what I thought was a better scene, which is her seeing him beforehand and then realizing what he's done, taking this guy's car and his life, and her insinuating her way into that situation, as opposed to she just wakes up and suddenly, you're a murderer.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I think that would have been a much more compelling scene if she had recognized the car and not the man and said, oh, this is an opportunity for me to potentially like blackmail or manipulate this guy, instead of just blurted out at the...
I mean, if you're going to have that level of coincidence where she just happens to be in that spot where he happens to be, and he happens to just randomly, completely out of character, decide that he's going to pick up a hitchhiker. I mean, in this moment where he is freaking out after feeling like he may have kind of contributed to this guy's death and and is obviously now covering it up and taking over his life, he suddenly decides, hey, you know what? Let me just pick up this random woman on the side of the road.
I did like how there was just no upside for him. Like, the whole time was just a downward spiral, and with that, exactly like you said, he tries to, I guess you could say, like a pay it forward type of thing and pick someone up, and of course it's exactly the wrong person, which, I mean, the chance is zero. It wouldn't happen, but I did enjoy the fact that this just went worse and worse for him, and part of that is because, like we were saying, he's not likable, and so as you're watching it get worse, you're kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, that's what's going to happen.
I kind of like that as a way of looking at this movie, that fate is constantly conspiring against this asshole.
It doesn't even matter what you do. Everything's going to go to crap for you.
I'll let everybody, again, tell all the audience here where they can find you. And if you wanted to say, what's going to come up on the next show after the 6th, you're welcome to do that as well. Max, why don't you start with us?
Sure thing. October, thank you. It's like you set me up perfectly here. October is going to be Alfred Hitchcock month on Classic Movie Musts. So every week will be a different Alfred Hitchcock movie, kind of tracing a line through his career. So if you're into that, by all means, check it out. And for all your other classic movie needs, you can check out Classic Movie Musts on all podcast services or at classicmoviemusts.com. and at patreon.com/classicmoviemusts, where have all sorts of fun tiers and rewards, and you can vote on upcoming movies and help decide the direction of the show. So by all means, check it out.
Nice. Is there a chance that we could still vote for which Hitchcock movies you're going to do?
I'm the decider of Hitchcock movies, but because of that, you'll get to decide 2 different movies for November. So by all means, vote away.
All right. Christy, you want to?
You can find me at ChristieStratos.com. I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube. I also have the Writer's Edge Show, which is on YouTube, and Creative Edge Writer Showcase, which is on SoundCloud. And you can also find me at patreon.com/ChristieStratos. And if you join the $8 level, that's where I hash out these movies. I do not have what I want to do planned necessarily ahead of time, but some of them are classic. Most of them are not. So if you're looking for something very different, you can stop by there.
Let me know when you do Shakespeare one. I'm definitely in on that.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right, guys. Everybody's a critic.
Yeah, we're the Everybody's a Critic podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Our website's IHateCritics.net, and our Patreon's IHateCritics.net/Patreon. I think upcoming in October, we're definitely doing something with Dawn of the Dead.
Right.
And I'm
we're going to do A Star Is Born, and I'm writing. I write a review every single day. I've done that now for nearly 100 straight days, and that's at Critic Sean on Twitter, where you can read those. But or you can get links to read them. But I'm gonna watch all the A Star Is Born movies that week, October 5th, and then the week of October 12th, I believe we're doing The Right Stuff.
Indeed, we are, because of the release of First Man, Damien Chazelle's First Man in theaters.
Yeah, and then October 19th is going to be Dawn of the Dead.
Very cool. Are you going to watch the newest version of A Star Is Born?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, really. I see every new release as part of my job. So.
And Bob and I wish we could see every new release.
No, we don't.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Definitely go check out everybody's pages, everybody's podcast. These guys are awesome, as you could obviously you found out here on our show. We thank you so much for being here. We've got more fandom coming in near future. You know, we do this the first weekend of first Saturday of every month, and we'll have another fandom forum, and we'll highlight some indies. And go check us out on everything that we're doing on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, and you know where to find us because you're already here. So thank you so much to everybody who participated in this. It was a lot of fun. You guys were awesome. And with that, it's always time to go indie now. We'll see you next time, everybody.